his condemnation of the use of force against anti-government protesters as the mass movement enters a critical juncture and political blocs tussle over naming a new premier. His comments came as unrest continued in Baghdad's Kilani and Wattaba squares, where at least 11 demonstrators were wounded by security forces firing tear gas canisters to disperse crowds. Meanwhile, protesters called for 1 million Iraqis to take to the streets to revitalize demonstrations and pressure the government to implement a reform agenda. US Defense Secretary Mark Esper said his country is looking for permission from Iraq to install Patriot missile air defenses inside the country to better defend US forces after Iran's 8th of January attack, which wounded 64 American troops. The Pentagon chief said the US military was still deciding on more tactical issues, such as where best to place the defenses. The Iraqi government has indicated it could expel all foreign forces, although it has not yet taken action against the US presence. The World Health Organization declared the outbreak sparked by a new virus in China that has spread to more than a dozen countries as a global emergency after the number of cases spiked more than tenfold in a week. The UN Health Agency defines an international emergency as an extraordinary event that constitutes a risk to the other countries and requires a coordinated international response. China raised the death toll to 200, and more countries reported infections, including some spread locally, as foreign evacuees from China's worst-hit region returned home to medical tests and even isolation. French President Emmanuel Macron stepped up his war of words with Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Thursday, accusing Turkey of meddling in Libya and announcing France will send warships to support Greece in its standoff with Ankara over energy reserves in the eastern Mediterranean. Earlier, Macron accused Turkey of sending ships with Syrian mercenaries to Libya in a breach of the Berlin Peace Conference, where world leaders agreed to stay out of the conflict. However, Turkey's foreign ministry rejected Macron's allegations as fanciful and blamed France for Libya's instability. The United Kingdom leaves the European Union for an uncertain Brexit future, the most significant change to its place in the world since the loss of empire and a blow to 70 years of efforts to forge European unity from the ruins of war. The country will slip away an hour before midnight from the club it joined in 1973, moving into the no-man's land of a transition period that reserves membership in all but name until the end of this year. At a stroke, the EU will be deprived of 15% of its economy, its biggest military spender, and the world's international financial capital of London. The divorce will shape the fate of the United Kingdom and determine its wealth for generations to come. Pilots and flight attendants are demanding airlines stop flights to China as health officials declare a global emergency over the rapidly spreading coronavirus, with American Airlines pilots filing a lawsuit seeking an immediate halt. China has reported nearly 10,000 cases and 213 deaths, but the virus has spread to 18 countries, often by plane passengers. The Allied Pilots Association, which represents American Airlines pilots, cited serious and in many ways still unknown health threats posed by the coronavirus in a lawsuit filed in Texas, where the airline is based. The IMF announced Jordanian officials reached an agreement with the International Monetary Fund on a $1.3 billion four-year aid program to help authorities stabilize the economy. The loan, which must be approved by the board of the Washington-based crisis lender, will help the government bring down public debt and spending gradually while supporting economic growth as the country hosts an influx of Syrian refugees. The aid program will reinforce the authority's ambitious macroeconomics and structural reform agenda for the next 4 years. UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay hailed how well Saudi Arabia's cultural gem of Ayuia has been preserved and the lessons future generations can learn from the region's history. Speaking at the Hague Conference of Nobel Prize Laureates, which is being held at the site at Maria Hall, Azoulay highlighted the importance of the site in promoting a cultural exchange. When asked how it felt to be in the conference, a gathering of more than 20 Nobel laureates and over 100 prominent scientists and thought community and political leaders from all over the world, she said it was the perfect site to spread the message of how important heritage is. Palestinians held demonstrations across the region to protest President Donald Trump's Middle East initiative, while militants in the Gaza Strip fired rockets and mortar rounds at Israel, drowning retaliatory strikes. The Palestinians have rejected the Trump plan, which heavily favors Israel and would allow it to annex all of its Jewish settlements, along with the Jordan Valley and the occupied West Bank. The Palestinians were offered limited self-rule in Gaza, parts of the West Bank and some sparsely populated areas of Israel, in return for meeting a long list of conditions. Israel launched airstrikes on militant targets in Gaza early Friday, shortly after Palestinians fired 3 rockets into Israel, 2 of which were intercepted. Pakistan temporarily suspended all direct flights with China after a global health emergency was declared over the coronavirus epidemic, which has killed more than 200 people. So far, there is no confirmed case of coronavirus in Pakistan. However, 4 Pakistani students in China have been confirmed as infected. Some 28,000 to 30,000 Pakistanis are living in China, while more than 500 Pakistani students are in virus-hit Wuhan, according to officials. The hanging of 4 men scheduled for a murder on a Delhi bus in 2012 has been postponed until further orders. The brutal attack on Jyoti Singh sparked weeks of demonstrations and shone a spotlight on the alarming rates of violence and the plight of women in India. The 4 men were convicted in 2013 and were due to be hanged simultaneously on Saturday, in India's first execution since 2015. A girl detonated a bomb, killing 3 boys at an Islamic seminary in northeast Nigeria in an attack that bore the hallmarks of Boko Haram. The girl, aged around 12, detonated the device late Thursday when open-air classes were on in Munadalti on the outskirts of Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. She walked up to the group of boys and blew herself up in their midst, who were just ending their lessons. One of the world's biggest financial institutions is to squeeze its lending to Turkey this year, following tensions between the EU and Ankara over its controversial oil and gas drilling operations in waters off Cyprus. The European Investment Bank, the lending arm of the EU, has announced it will restrict loans to Turkey, which over the last decade have amounted to around 19 billion euros. Brussels is against any exploration for oil and gas in territory that falls under EU member state Cyprus' exclusive economic zone. However, Ankara claims Turkish drilling ships are operating within Turkey's continental shelf.